Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and to hopefully um, share with us some of your experiences and at the same time kind of get an update on what we're doing here at the institution and what we've been doing. I'd like to start by just simply letting you know that we truly appreciate everything that you have done over the last semester to put us in this position that I think is a very commendable position, which is that we have our students succeeding, our students graduating, our students finishing the term because of all of the efforts that you have been able to put together and all of the wonderful work that you did to transition us to where we are. And I do hope that you're all doing well and staying healthy and doing everything possible to stay resilient during these very difficult times. I don't think there's ever been a time when any of us have experienced what we're experiencing now. And at the same time, I think we need to look forward and see what possibilities will come as we move into the summer and into the next semester. I want to take just a moment on a personal note to thank everybody who's reached out after the passing of my father. It was very touching and very appreciative, and I think reflective of who we are as an institution and how much care and concern we have for each other and for our students. There is some good news this semester. As you can see, we do have a commencement, hopefully, coming up next week. And I say hopefully because there's a bit of a concern as to whether it happens, but right now we're very optimistic. We are hopefully 90% sure that it is going to happen as we have planned. So thank you for volunteering, those of you that have volunteered. We have an amazing number of students, as you can see on the computer there, over 1,900 students who earn degrees, students finishing up the bachelor's degree, and obviously at least 80 students who shared where they're going to transfer to. So some amazing successes and statistics as we move forward. One of the things that's been on our mind, that's been pressing for us is that, what are we going to do in the summer? What are we going to do in the fall? And although I think we've been pretty sure we're going to move to online fall, we've decided that that is the direction we're going to take. Summer, obviously, we've announced is going to be online as well. What I think is important that we understand, and Laura, Dr. Ramirez will get to this later, is that there is a little bit of loosening up of some of the regulations, and we do need to complete some of those courses. So some of the classes that are labs or CTE, as Laura will talk about sooner, may have a little more flexibility. So the decision to have fall online doesn't necessarily mean that we will all be remote through the fall. It means that some of us are going to have to come back and get ready for the summer when we bring some people on campus, and then get ready for the fall as well. So that is about fall and summer. This work that we've been doing at the institution to overcome this pandemic has been monumental, and I want to thank from the bottom of my heart each and every one of you who's done things that we never dreamed we would do, going online, remote services, remote counseling, working from home. We've had so many people who've been doing some excellent work from home, and then those that have been coming in that we've deemed essential workers that have been doing the good work at the institution. Thank you so much. I can't say enough how much I appreciate it, and the institution and the district and the board appreciate it. We have some bigger challenges, if they can't get any bigger than that, and that is the consequences of the COVID pandemic. And those are going to be addressed in just a little bit by Interim Vice President Hawken. But I think it's important to know that we recognize that this was a possibility about a month ago, if not earlier. And as a result, we've asked what we're calling the Budget Task Force, which is the group of institutional leaders, to come together and help us to look at options as we move forward so that the PFC committee can take a look at maybe some options that we can look at when we have to cut our budget. And although Interim Vice President Hawken is going to tell us about more of the detail of what that means, what it means in a nutshell is that we're going to have to reduce our budget by anywhere from 10 to 15%, it looks like at this point, based on the most recent information we received from the Chancellor's office and from the Governor's office and what we call the May revise. But I'm very confident that together, those of us that are having to make these decisions, and I hope that is all of us, not only the task force, but the PFC, the college itself, and the district and the board, will make those decisions thinking about equity, thinking about fairness, thinking about putting people first. We've had a tremendous resilience in the past when we've had to overcome other challenges like this. And although I think you'll hear from Interim Vice President Hawken that these challenges are much more extreme and severe than those in 91 and 2008, I still believe that we can overcome those challenges as we work together. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Hopefully the presentation will answer some of your questions, but I just want to acknowledge your tremendous effort and your willingness to work through this crisis that we're living. At the end of the presentations, I will come back and offer a few words, and then if we have time, we'll have some questions. If not, I do want to make it clear that all of your questions, if you have questions as they come up, which I'm sure you will be recorded, and then we will get those answers to you if we don't have time to get them to you today. So with that, I want to hand it over to Interim Vice President Hawken.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just trying to share my screen. Oh, Ruthie, is that your?
Yes,
you doing that?
I'm going to run it for you, Chris.
Oh, wow. Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so again, good morning, everybody. Thanks for that introduction, Dr. Reyes. I'm going to kind of go through some of these things fairly quickly so we can understand past situation and current situation. And as Dr. Reyes said, if there's questions that we can't answer during this town hall, please put them into the chat and we can follow up and get those answers out to everybody. So starting back in January, we had one of the best economic outlooks that the state has seen in many, many years. Low unemployment, job growth, lots of new jobs in the state of California, and the fifth largest economy in the world. And we had a projected surplus of $5.6 billion. It was a fantastic time, and the January budget produced by the Chancellor's office was extremely promising and exciting. However, here we are today. Things have changed quite a little bit. You know, we've gone from a time of excitement to a time of concern, and as you can see from the picture in front of you, just the GDP has fallen off the face of the earth. Huge unemployment rates, all sorts of things. So we are officially in what they call a recession. Two types of models are being discussed in terms of recovery from this. There's a U-shaped model and there's an L-shaped model. You know, the U-shaped model starts, as we hit summer and sort of kicks up the economy in the second half of 21. The L-shaped, which is now the more realistic model, begins in the summer of 21 and doesn't hit recovery till 23. Some of the figures that have been flying around out there with unemployment rates, the national unemployment rate, I think, makes the news. But right here in LA County, unemployment rate's now at 20%, which means 1 out of 5 people are unemployed in the county. And that sort of adds up that once we get to the end of 2020, they're projecting 760,000 jobs will have been lost. And when you compare that to the unemployment rate last year at 4.4%, you can see there's a radical change. One of the indicators that jumped off at me was what the economy is doing is the Southern California area could experience a 32% drop in taxable sales. That's like $220 billion. That's everything from restaurants to clothing stores. I'm sure you've all seen the news. Restaurants, going out of business, clothing stores filing for bankruptcy. Very, very challenging times. So as we look at the variables, these are those U-shaped and L-shaped charts. I won't spend a lot of time on these. Sometimes it's easier to look at the visual. Just kind of gives you the recovery time. The U-shaped is just the more optimistic one that people are beginning to move away from. This talks about that recovery starting immediately and really kicking up in the second half of 2021. And in large, that was based on the fact that at the beginning of the year, the economy was good, the state's debts were paid off, and the economy was in a recovery. The L-shaped one will remain in a slump well into 2021. You can see from this chart, it continues to go down, and it doesn't really bounce back. If people have been following stock market, you can see what's happening in the stock market. You can see what's happening to wages. You can see what's happening to payroll. This is much more slow recovery. And as I alluded to before, the recovery out of this is going to be hampered because unemployment levels aren't going to return to what they were because there's a lot of folks that are out of business. So I do want to talk about a couple of highlights that came out of the May revise. There's some protection in place for some of those really needier programs, EUPS, DSPS. Right now, no budget cuts aimed at those areas. The May revise maintains funding for the California Promise. Sort of half good news is the fund has been deferred. Because our hiring process has been stopped due to COVID, we haven't been able to follow through with all the hires we were anticipating on making. That would have actually pushed our fund up to almost $1.5 million in penalties. But what they've done is they've deferred it. But it's a very dangerous word, deferred. That means they've moved it out, but it hasn't been canceled. So the state can come back to us at a time in the future and say, oh, by the way, everything's good now. You need to pay up for the fund. So hiring right now is sort of on hiatus, but it will be returning as soon as it's prudent to do so. All right, now the maybe not quite so much fun stuff, unfortunately. The governor's budget was pretty damaging to California community colleges and education around the state. And there's three really significant pieces to talk about. The first one is the general cut to the Prop 98 fund. It's about a $593 million cut, which means that's about 10% to each college. And for our college, if you look at this is just general fund. This is not including categoricals. So if you look at our general fund, that's a cut that could be as high as $9.7 million. So that is a huge sum of money, and that affects next year's budget. So we have a little bit of time to plan for that, but clearly that is something that is significant. The next two items are other deferrals. And again, there's the word deferral, which is a concern. So the immediate concern is a deferral that has been put into place immediately. What that means is we may not receive all of our May apportionment check, and we will not probably receive any of our June apportionment check. So those two total approximately $9 million. So if we don't get $4.5 million in May, and if we don't get $4.5 million in June, that gets taken out of our budget, and we still have to meet all our obligations and expenses, payroll, health benefit payments. We have to keep the lights on. We have to pay the bills. So that's something that was really not anticipated. It's deferred, so we do get the money back in the future, but there's no promise as to when we actually get that money back. Even if it was to be returned to us next year, you'll see the next bullet point talks about next year's budget. Out of next year's budget, they're deferring $662 million into the future years. And so again, for a whole year, that could be another $9 million for us. So we have a scenario here that starts to get a little bit scary. A couple of other adjustments. Strong workforce was called out individually in the budget to equal about a 60% reduction. And so our share would be 60% of what we currently receive. That's a next year impact as far as we can tell right now. and not something that's going to impact us immediately this year. But clearly that's a massive cut in strong workforce, something that we will have to address for next year. Categoricals sometimes get untouched, but unfortunately in this go around, there's 4 or 5 categoricals that have been touched, and some have been touched by 15%, and that includes student equity and achievement, system support, part-time faculty office hours, compensation, academic senate, and adult ed has also been cut by 10%. The planned COLA, even though you may hear and see a 2.31% COLA floated around as a number, it has been eliminated as being a funded COLA. So again, you may see 2.31% COLA. Typically that means that colleges and maybe contractual obligations receive additional funding for that. But at this point, they've eliminated the planned COLA. Another damaging piece for us, as we hear all these facts, is the fact that there'll be no enrollment growth funding. In the previous budget, there was 0.5% for growth, and we actually didn't expect a lot of growth back in January, so that seemed to be a real opportunity for us. However, the way the governor has worded these cutbacks is by saying the governor, quote unquote, expects us to maintain current services even with these significant reductions. And I think a lot of us are, as we discuss what's happening with the Cal States, the UCs and the private institutions, there's a lot of talk about why would somebody go to a 4-year institution and pay more money instead of attending their local community college if everything's going to be online and the same. So there's a potential increase to our enrollment that we have to manage with all this too. There are some other adjustments that are coming down the pipe. The quote from the state is, in January, they had added several new programs with the additional funds and the better budget that we had at that time. Those programs that were proposed back in January have all been withdrawn. I've highlighted a couple of them because we were pretty excited about them because they would have significant impact for our students. As you know, the type of student that we serve here at Rio Hondo is in the lower socioeconomic standings, as you can see from the work our food pantry is currently doing. Unfortunately, there was going to be an additional $11 million added. That has been taken away. There was additional funding to support Dreamer liaisons and equity funding of about $5.5 million. That has been taken away. There was a decrease of about $15 million in one-time Prop 98 funds. And then you can see there another $10 million decrease part-time hours that I alluded to before. Another one that's damaging for us, although just met with Michaela in grants just a few minutes ago, we're looking at a grant to hopefully offset some of this. There was a proposal to increase funds to develop zero textbook cost degrees, which Rio Hondo was actively supporting and getting behind. Those funds have also been withdrawn. And then the some dual enrollment instruction materials have been withdrawn. One of the things that I want to explain to everybody, people hear me use the word bucket, and in the past they've heard me use the word big bucket. And the reason I use those words is because you don't use all these fancy names. We just have different buckets where certain monies are put into. And one of the sort of the rules of the game is you can't take money out of one bucket and stick it in another bucket. So if one bucket gets empty, you can't take money from the other buckets to help fill that bucket up. And in the analogy that I'd used in the past is we had sort of this big bucket with money sitting in that really nobody understood what it was, but it was just there and could be used. Essentially what this budget does is kick that bucket over and empty it, so there is no magic bucket. So the budgets we have left are general fund budget, which is typically unrestricted, but it gets allocated to certain sections within the budget. There's categoricals, which are not part of the general fund. In the past, the budget presentations have rolled general fund and the categoricals into one line item and one amount, so it's been a bit misleading. So in the budget presentations that are being given to the board, we've now separated those out so people can see where the categoricals lie and where the general fund lies. Categoricals often have their own sets of rules. They have certain reporting requirements, they have audit requirements, and they sometimes have different calendars on which they operate. So we might have a fiscal year that ends in June, but there are some budgets that cycles through to September and some to December. The grants themselves, they're usually very specific. If you've got grants, you understand it. If you don't have grants, I'm not going to explain it here in the next 10 minutes, but there's a lot of reporting included with that, and you'll hear a lot of reliance on grants. You'll see some people that are funded by grants in their positions. There's also a bucket called scheduled maintenance. It is exactly like it sounds. That is for maintaining our campus. You've seen some of the painting work that's been going on, some of the other beautification projects on campus. That's all out of scheduled maintenance. As it says, it's for specific planned and also for emergency use that comes up if, for example, we have issues with our hydronic lines. A couple of new buckets that have surfaced during this crisis is there's some CARES funding and there's FEMA funding. The CARES funding has been extremely confusing for everybody because it seems like every week the rules on how to use the funds change. When they first came out, it was a very broad funding base and allowed the colleges to use it as needed. That's been narrowed down extremely. Phase one was narrowed down to almost pinpoint accuracy. That the directive was basically cut the students a check and up to the colleges how they did that. Phase two was much broader and has narrowed down, and the basis behind that now is instruction directly related to the students with a possible caveat of sanitation of spaces and technology being allowed, but those seem to come and go. The CARE funds have extremely high levels of accountability, and they have 30-day reporting requirements, so we have to keep very, very accurate accounts of how we spend that money. We have actually received the funding for phase one and phase two, so it's within our student services area in the financial aid, and we're able to draw down on those funds, and allocations have already been reserved for students. FEMA is a little bit different. FEMA, we get nothing up front. We have to do our due diligence. We have to deal with huge levels of bureaucracy, potential incredible time delays on receiving any funds that we're approved for. We're not even guaranteed 100% reimbursement. There's the potential for us to get some upfront monies on that after we've made an initial application. Michaela and I, primarily Michaela, is working very hard on trying to maybe get a 15% advancement on some of our incurred expenses. We've literally already incurred, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses through laptops, sanitization, things like that. And there can be very long days. If any of you have ever had the misfortune to do FEMA work in an emergency before, which I have, there can be extremely long delays in actually receiving those funds. So you may ask me, why am I talking about these buckets? Again, we can't move the funds around, and certain things can only be bought out of certain buckets. And the reason I'm explaining this is you may see something being done or purchased on campus. It might look expensive. It might seem very bad timing to do something like this. And one of the examples I'm going to give you is painting. You've seen some painting happen on campus, and you may well see some more painting happen on campus. And at the same time, you may be hearing me and others discussing having to pull back on the budget because we don't have enough money. So there is actually about $1 million in our scheduled maintenance bucket, but that cannot be used for anything else other than scheduled maintenance. And one of the things we're considering doing, some of our classroom spaces, our maintenance director has walked those spaces, often with the deans in those areas, and there's some spaces that need painting. And it might be that if we continue in this remote mode for a while, this is an opportunity to get into some of the classrooms and paint them. And I just want to try to give an understanding that you may be questioning why you see painting happening in a time of budget reductions. So if you have further questions on that, please feel free to send them to me via the chat or any other way, and I can help you understand that a bit better. So what does this mean to us right now? As I explained at the start of the presentation, there's a pretty immediate issue here with the deferrals. These deferrals are happening now, today. And so usually we would be expecting our apportionment checks in May and June. We're pretty certain that we're not going to get one at all in June, and we don't know if we're going to get some, a little, a lot, none in May. We're waiting to hear that, and hopefully this afternoon at about 3 o'clock I have a Zoom that I should be able to find out some more information. So what we're asking you to do is cut back today. If there's something that you don't need right now, you know, don't get it. Now, we have some open purchase orders out to, you know, some to Office Depot and places like that. Please conserve. Please try not to panic and say, oh my gosh, let's spend everything now so I have stuff for next year. We have a serious issue facing us today that we want to try and address and deal with. A couple of people I've talked to, it's kind of like squeezing the last piece of toothpaste out of the tube. You know, if it's half full, we don't chuck it away. We squeeze it until there's nothing left. So if you have questions on that, we're essentially holding any new requisitions that are coming in, and the wording that we're using as a sort of a generic statement is mission critical. If there's something that's mission critical, we may well proceed. If it's not mission critical, we may be holding it for now. So we want to try and get everybody's input. I'm trying to maybe change the culture on campus. We started that process when I first arrived about trying to be much more transparent in the budgeting processes, inviting more groups to participate, working with folks on understanding their budgets, actually being allowed to see their budgets, and therefore managing and being accountable. So along these same lines, we've tried to pull together a group on campus to give insights, and I got to thank those folks for stepping up. This is not fun stuff for anybody to be engaged in, and so their willingness to do this and the honesty and the integrity they brought to the process has been excellent. One of the early discussions we had was really, you know, generating sort of what's our guidelines, what's our philosophy behind this? And I think what we came up with is sort of weaving into the process equity and putting our people first. And so some colleges you'll see have automatically jumped to layoffs. They've automatically jumped already to cutting classes. And you'll see that, you know, Rio Hondo hasn't done yet. And as we've worked through this with the group, we've come up with some sort of different areas. So we've come up with some sort of low-hanging fruit stuff, which might be some supplies or something like that, some initial revenues that we have on hand that we know is really not that painful. We've talked about how do we optimize and evaluate our current structures on campus. Those could be mechanical structures, they could be digital structures, they could be organizational structures. We obviously want to make sure we comply with all regs and mandates. You know, we might have something like nursing program that has very specific regulations that if we fall out and violate those regulations, we could lose accreditation in the nursing program. We absolutely don't want to go down those pathways at all, which is why it's important to have people across campus participating in the process. And, you know, people first along with that is the other sub area. So the task force is working as best we can. We're finally getting some numbers. Numbers here are not always easy to get because of the lack of some digital systems. And we're sort of reviewing numbers, coming up with ideas, and we're planning a follow-up meeting as soon as we can all get together. That group will in turn report out to the PFC because that is a sort of a sub-task force of the PFC. And they'll provide the PFC with information. Hopefully there'll be some lively discussion at PFC, and then that will be brought forward to the college as the budget is reviewed. Within those categories, there's sort of some subcategories. I already mentioned mission critical is one of the terms we're using. We didn't have a very good term for our middle one, so it's kind of like desired, and that is kind of, if there's enough money, we'd like to keep it, but if we have to cut something, that's something that maybe has to get reduced. And then there are non-essential items as the final category. There has been a big request by the state, if you've been following along. The governor has made an appeal to the federal government. Relations, from what I see and read, are not always the best between California and the federal government. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. But within a lot of the language, there are these trailer bills that follow up that essentially state that if the feds step up and come through, then maybe our problems will not be as bad as they will be. And there's no quantification to that. We just have to wait to see what the Fed's response is. Again, there's these immediate deferrals that are going to happen. They're happening right now, and we have to immediately work on maintaining our essential services, which is going to be payroll and obvious bills like I said, keeping their lights on. And remember, these cuts, our total general fund budget is about $95 million. So a $10 million cut out of that is pretty significant. To give you an example, all our faculty, staff, costs, everything associated with the people comes up to about 87% of our total budget today. So you can see the gap here is pretty dangerous. What are other colleges doing to address this situation? They're doing everything imaginable. You know, if you check in with your colleagues, you know, different colleagues at different colleges, you know, I'm checking around with my colleagues, finding out what's happening, how people are dealing with situations. Some people are getting what they call basically their loans through state offices. Some people are dipping in. Some people might have huge reserves. Some people have looked at people as not being as valuable as we have looked at people. So a lot's going on other places. And as we work with our task force, that's what we're hoping to address. One of the critical pieces that I would like everybody to do, Michaela Brennan Grants is going to be reaching out, and she's going to be working with deans and directors of areas to make sure that we do all the appropriate paperwork. I will tell you, it is not exciting to fill the paperwork, and it might seem incredibly bureaucratic, but the bottom line is if we do not fill out that paperwork and do it in accordance with FEMA requirements, we will not receive any of those reimbursements. So that is very, very important to us. So with that, that's pretty much my presentation, and Laura can make us all feel much happier than I just did, I hope.
I hope so too. Good morning, everyone. I see that we are close to the 300 mark, and I just want to say thank you for all of you that are here joining us today. I think this is really a testament to the commitment of all our faculty, our staff, our leadership team, and even our students, and how committed we are to our college. Again, I want to say thank you to the campus community, the faculty, staff, and everyone for supporting the transition to online, to distance ed, and also to responding to the pandemic. It's been amazing to see the amount of work everywhere that's been committed to making sure our students continue on their path. Also, I want to recognize the work of our distance education team, Gabby, Zulma, our DE coordinators, our dean. Everyone has just really been taking that leadership role and taking this under their wing. It's been great to see how much they've supported the campus and helping us. A few of the things I'd like to bring up regarding, we know spring, we transitioned quickly to online. We had to suspend some of our critical classes or programs in the areas of police, fire, even in nursing, although those were considered essential workforce training programs. We waited a little bit to sometimes bring those back. And we have, because they've been identified as essential workforce. And we have received a lot of requests, not only from our faculty and staff in those programs to bring them back, but also from our agencies that need the workforce and want to make sure that they have the people they need to respond during this time. Having said that, we took a lot of caution in bringing some of those programs back, implementing safety and hygiene measures to make sure that our students and our faculty and staff are safe. For summer 2020, there's a number of programs that hands-on activity is really critical. And some of those are in the areas of CTE, like welding and automotive technology, where students need that hands-on experience. And so we're taking measures working with our Department of Health, using those guidelines to make sure that we do everything and anything possible to keep the community safe. And again, making sure that we provide that essential workforce to the community. For fall, we have, as you heard, we're moving online. And there may be instances where we have some programs or classes that will need to be brought back in some format. We don't know exactly how. Again, in the areas of police, nursing, health sciences, maybe some of our science labs. And so I'm working with the deans to develop a plan that we can share with the campus, with the faculty in those areas and the students, to see how we make that as safe as possible for our students and for our community here on the campus. So for fall 2020, we are remote, but we are looking to see what we may need to bring back to campus and in what format. You've seen that the fawn has been deferred, not forgiven. So because of that, we're not moving forward at this time with any of hiring at this determined to be critical, and those conversations are still in progress across the campus. For fall, since we've determined we're going to be online, we also are looking to see what our flex looks like. And so I'm working with the faculty leadership to see what types of opportunities we can develop for Flex Day for fall 2020. And again, as far as our transition process for bringing faculty, students, and staff back to campus, I've asked all of the deans that have, well, all the deans to start thinking about what that looks like, because it should be very gradual. We should look at key points where we want or need to bring anybody back, and that we have a consensus of what that looks like. So with that, I will hand it over to our Academic Senate President.
There we go. Yeah, sorry. Someone had to unmute me. So I had no idea that picture was going to show up again. Oh, Lord. Okay. You give it to them once and they use it forever. Hi, everyone. I just want to say a few things kind of from the faculty perspective and acknowledge the work of our faculty, much in the way that VP Ramirez just did. Thank you, Dr. Ramirez, Dr. Ramirez, for your work on this, and Dr. Reyes for giving me the time to speak. For the record, I put this list together with Rudy, our union president, who has been working a ton on everything as well. So throughout the COVID crisis, just personally, I've been extremely proud of our faculty. Our faculty in student support services, such as counseling in the library, were in many ways the most ready to move to an online environment as a group. They seem to have made the transition extremely well. I've heard that our numbers are extremely strong for appointments and our other services. And I'll leave the specifics to Henry, who's, I think, coming up soon to discuss those details. Instructional faculty have had to learn Canvas. They've had to figure out how to teach remotely. They've had to figure out how to support students through this crisis. And they've done it with flexibility, with compassion, with empathy, still maintaining some sort of academic integrity in their classes. And it is not an easy line to walk. I'm very proud of what we have done as a group. I believe it is extremely safe to say that most faculty in both academic affairs and student services are working more hours in this format than they have previously. And if you don't know, many of our faculty are still holding class at normal times using Zoom, or they did for most of the rest of the semester. And other faculty chose a different path where they created like videos and activities and posted them for students to watch and do. We have encouraged flexibility with our faculty. Students who cannot make it to class at a specific time, even in some sort of remote environment, are being given other options for learning the materials. So the Senate has passed motions changing drop deadlines, changing pass not pass deadlines to give students flexibility in making their choices. I want to also reiterate what Dr. Ramirez brought up. Yesterday, the Academic Senate passed resolutions in appreciation of the work that our DE team has done, recognizing the hours of work that Gabriela Olmos, Zolma Calderon, Jill Pfeiffer, Jody Sank, and Grant Linzel have done to support this transition. We truly are indebted to you folks. The Senate also passed a resolution in recognition of our adjunct faculty and the particular burden this has placed on them. We want to recognize how they have stepped up and continue to provide excellent education to our students throughout this crisis. I know that this was a tough transition for our faculty and for probably everyone, but I believe that we are, continually keeping the best interests of our students in mind. They are the reason that we are here, right? One last thing, Chris spoke about the budget. I do want to mention that, as a campus, it's very concerning. We all should be a bit concerned. We do have a budget task force. That group has not met in over 2 weeks though, but I believe that there's a meeting that just got scheduled for this Friday. So hopefully as a group, we will start making progress toward making some recommendations. They will then come to PFC, which is hopefully going to meet in 2 weeks. And then I believe there's going to be some sort of campus input via a forum or something like that as well. So we hope to make sure that all recommendations get input from everyone across the board. So on that, thank you for the time, and I hope to see you all in person soon. I think next up is Sandra. Yeah.
Oh, the same can be said for that picture too, huh? Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I have an insecure connection here, so just let me know, please. First of all, congratulations to all of the classified staff. This is the 3rd week of May. California legislature has recognized this week as the California Classified School Employees Week. So in recognition of all of the outstanding and unique services and work that the classified staff provide to public education. And so congratulations to you all, and thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you are doing. Thank you to the Dr. Reyes and to the COVID-19 task force. From the very beginning, Rio Hondo has been working in preparation for this transition, and it was relatively without a hitch. The technology was provided for, the PPE was provided for. We had PPE before the order was even sounded. So thank you to all the connections in the custodial services for their work in providing the PPE. The outstanding work that has come from the classified staff, they've been assuring that students are staying on their path to completion and success. They've been keeping the college fiscally sound and staying in completing all of their commitments to all of our vendors and services. And facilities has been doing their job in the most clean and sanitary fashion. Most notably, there's been a cadre of about 40 classified members who have made 13,000 calls to check in and support students. Thank you, a heartfelt thank you to distance education and to IT for keeping it all online. Thank you to the classified staff in the library, and most especially to facilities, finance and business, and in accounting. I wanted just to mention briefly, in preparation for summer, there will be some of you that will be returning from remote to on-site. I'm pleased asking you to let CSEA know that you are on campus. And this is, I'm making a respectful request to the managers that they let facilities know that their staff is on site in order that sufficient PPE can be provided for the employee. And in many cases, we are witnessing in the library, we have to provide it to students. The custodians need to know where you are so that, and that you're occupying spaces so that they can follow up and make sure that they are clean and sanitized. Before coming, please think about and plan your movement throughout the day. The restrooms you use, the offices you may visit, like HR, like the mailroom or the president's office. If you are anticipating students or vendors at your desks or counters, please plan for safe distancing. Preparation for all of this is key. I have received requests requesting more information when the staff is notified about some of us, those of us who have become ill or tested positive. I promise to follow up with those sources for the information to make sure that a little more detail is provided as to the cleaning and disinfecting that goes on after such notice. And regarding the budget task force and the situation with the budget, yes, it is very, very serious, but I'm asking you, I'm imploring you, please not to panic. If any group of people has gone through tough budget times, it is the faculty, staff, and administration at Rio Hondo College. We have sacrificed and weathered crises over 7 years back in the recession of 2008. And we sacrificed, but we did not lose any permanent jobs. This time, even though it is quite serious, there is light at the end of the tunnel, because this time, instead of 7 years, it's up to 3 years, with the first year being the hardest. I'm not looking at this through rose-colored glasses, I promise, but it's because we are willing, this budget task force, and I'm so pleased to be working with Rudy and Kevin and Dr. Laura and Alice Meekum, Henry and Chris in formulating these recommendations. We are going to do the hard work to live up to the principles that this task force has set for itself, and try to do it with the most care possible, and to submit these recommendations to the PFC. So until we all meet again, I wish you and your families great health, and thank you for all your work that you are doing for the students and for the college. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. This is Arturo, and before we move to Henry, I just wanted to take a moment to truly and sincerely thank the leadership from the campus for their work on the task force and for their support as we go through these challenging times, and at the same time for their vision that I think Sandra expressed very clearly as to where we're going in the future. So thank you to all of the leadership, Sandra and Kevin in particular. And before we move to the last of the vice presidents, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the work that Henry's done. As you know, he's announced his retirement at the end of this academic year. So I wanted to just thank Henry publicly, since we may not have another opportunity to bring everybody together to celebrate his accomplishments and all of his leadership over the years, and his guidance to us all, and his strength that he's given me as I have taken on this job as well. So Henry, thank you so much for everything that you've done. And I want to take a moment to just acknowledge your tremendous work and your career in student services and here at Rio Hondo. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes. And you know, as Dr. Reyes said, many of you already know I am retiring at the end of this this year, and it has been a bittersweet, at the same time, something I look forward to. I want to say first and foremost that the students at Rio Hondo College continue to amaze myself, and I think all of you, because even in the midst of this crisis, our students have continued to be successful, continued to be resilient, persistent, and really shine. I get to speak about some of the things that we've done as a college to help meet the needs of our students. A lot of people have asked specifically about CARES, and as you have seen, we had a $6.2 million allocation of CARES to our college, of which the first 50%, $3.1 million, is for direct student aid. So this Friday, the first allocation is going out. Thank you to Dr. Reyes' guidance, and then to, I have to acknowledge, Melba Castro, Ceci Rocha, David Levy, and then specifically the financial aid staff and Ed Wu from IT for coordinating all that effort to make sure that our students get money this coming Friday. And so our first disbursement is going to be approximately $923,000. It's a little bit less than what we had anticipated, because we have to make sure they meet the criteria that CARES has put out for us. So we had originally had about 3,000 students giving about 1.1 million. Now we're about 2,100 students getting about 923,000. So the good news is that money's not being lost. It's going to be given to other students, but congratulations to those students, and they'll be awarded this coming Friday. So that's the CARES disbursement this coming week, and we'll have follow-up disbursements as well. You heard Dr. Reyes speak about our commencement and the number of students who are being successful. I want to highlight just one small group, which is a nice group, is that out of the 9 graduates from the ASRHC that are transferring, I believe 4 or 5 are going to UCs, including 3 to Berkeley and a couple to UCLA. So the college continues to do well. our students continue to do well and prosper, thanks to the transfer center and all the counselors have continued to shine. Kevin alluded to the contacts, and I will talk about that actually in the next part of student connections, but the contacts have been significantly increased during this time. Even though they're not here, they still have needs. And so commencement is, I know everyone saw the Barbara Ferrer, Sheila Kuehl, Supervisor Kuehl's chat over the weekend, specifically saying no drive-in commencement, stick to virtual. This college will not have a drive-in. Please understand, it's a drive-through. There is a difference, similar to our food pantry. No students get out of cars. There is no contact. We put the stuff in the back of their trunk and they keep on driving through. And so it's a drive-through acknowledgement. It's not a drive-in, which is banned, and which we support the ban. You can't have people just milling around. So that's something that's really we're doing there. And that's next Tuesday and Wednesday, the day after Memorial Day. As far as the student connections, Guided Pathways Calling and Student Calling Project, first, the Guided Pathways was kind of a pilot project for our student success teams. And so that's a cross-sectional group from faculty and staff, also for the faculty and administrators to really work together and try to reach out. And it was definitely more of a qualitative project. There were hundreds of people that made connections, but they were reaching out to us and we followed up with them. And so that went really well. And the gamut of concerns from food insecurities to how to get tutoring, all those things were being done. And so that was Guided Pathways Project, which was separate from the Student Calling Project. You heard Sandra allude to that. There are actually over 50 staff members, classified management and others on the Calling Project. We reached out to over 12,700 students out of the 13,000 possible that we're being able to call. And we made contact with 72.6% of those students. So that was impressive. 50 plus people calling for about a month, over 12,700 students were called. And so that's really important. And to give you an idea about contacts, thanks to Dean Chavez and counseling, in weeks 1 to 7, we were about 4% above last year's as far as student contact, which is before we went to remote. And then between the weeks 8 and 13, when we went remote, the actual number of student contacts compared to last year went up 24%. So it shows that students are still reaching out, still have needs, and faculty and staff, and in particular our counseling department and other folks are really answering that call. And so that was important for you to know that students are still reaching out, still looking for help. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is our Rio Cares fundraiser. You know that in this time of need for our students, it never hurts to have a fundraiser. Oftentimes at the beginning of the year during Flex Day, we talk about our faculty staff campaign. Well, this campaign is specifically geared to provide additional funds to our students. So as of this morning, the newest amount was up to $27,356, or approximately 54% of our toward our goal of $50,000. So if you've already donated, thank you so much. If you haven't donated, please consider it. It's direct 100% money given to our students. And so that would really, really be important. And I really want to thank, it's just a faculty and staff combined. There have been some officers that have been working super hard, and I think they all work hard, but particularly in admissions and records and also in financial aid for the work they've been doing to make sure that students' needs are being met. Now, it would be remiss upon me if I didn't at least acknowledge our students, and in particular, because many of you know that during commencement, I always have to read at least one quote for our students. And so my quote for our students this year and for our college assistants is from Marian Wright Edelman: "Be considerate of others will take your children further in life than any college degree." I think as our college continues to be considerate for our students and their needs, that they will take them further in their lives. And this is for our college family because, as Dr. Reyes said, after 41 years of working at colleges, I am retiring, and I have spent the majority of my career in community colleges, 26, of which the majority has been here at Rio Hondo. And so my quote for all of my colleagues here at Rio Hondo is this: "What lies behind you and what lies in front of you pales in comparison to what lies inside of you." That's Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I think that what this college has is the resilience and the persistence and the heart to really, really make a difference for our students in the future. So don't let this COVID-19 pull you down. Continue to fight hard for our students, and we'll be very successful. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Reyes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry. I appreciate it. And I just want to, again, take a moment to thank everybody for participating I know that the limit on these Zooms is 300, and we did get to 300, so good thing we're recording. We'll be able to make this available to others who weren't able to log in, because there was a point where we were at 300. So with that, I just want to maybe close by talking about a couple of things. And one of them is that not only has Rio Hondo and the faculty, staff, and community been able to, I think, endure this challenge, but at the same time, many of our staff and faculty and managers have been volunteering to do more, not only to give to Real Cares, but also volunteering at testing sites, volunteering at the pantry, and doing all of those things that you would never expect would be done while somebody is going through a pandemic and struggling to get through our own individual challenges and our own collective challenges. But you know, I was reminded recently that our college is Rio Hondo, and there are a number of colleges that have the name Rio or river in them, but none of them have the word Hondo, and Hondo meaning deep or profound. And I think, you know, to add to Henry's sentiments at the end, that deep sentiment that we have that's about caring and love and concern and community is what's going to get us through this. And although we have been challenged, I think there's so much more that we're going to be able to do because of that strength of character as an organization that we have. And so with that conviction, I think we're going to move forward. I think we're going to be amazing when we come out of this and we all come back. No more virtual greetings and thumbs up and claps. I think we'll be able to celebrate our friendships and our nature of just being humans and being around each other and appreciating our students. So I hope that that's something that we're all looking forward to. And I think it's going to be a great rebound as we struggle through these financial challenges. I'm optimistic that we're going to be in a much better and a much stronger place as we move forward. So with that, I wanted to acknowledge the rest of the folks who are going to be retiring. And I know that they've been recognized a bit at the board meeting. And I just wanted to acknowledge all of those people and give you an opportunity to applaud virtually the tremendous work that they've done, the contributions that they've made to Rio Hondo, and you know, to make us the strong and amazing institution that we are. So thank you to everybody who's going to be retiring. Thank you for everybody and everything that you've been doing this semester and that you will be doing in the future with us together. So with that, I think that concludes our presentations, and we are probably a few minutes from the end. Oh my goodness, we're right at 12 o'clock pretty much. But I saw some chat questions that were being answered, so I appreciate that. I also want to take a moment to appreciate everybody who participated and the folks that made it happen in the background. So Ruthie, Angie, Markel, Renee, and IT folks and everybody else that I missed. Thank you so much. And if you do have any other questions, feel free to email me directly. You can copy the VPs, or if it's a specific question about financial aid, obviously you can, you know, refer to those individuals or graduation. We will know hopefully in the next couple of days where we are with commencement, and we hope we can still have it. We're doing everything we can to make it happen so that our students can have some kind of a celebration. So thank you again. Appreciate your time. Thank you for everything you do for Rio Hondo. And I'm sure we're going to be stronger as a result of this. And we really rely on your help and support as we make some difficult budget decisions. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.